Well, good evening, good afternoon. I don't know what time it is anymore. And of course, depending on where you are in the world, that will be different as well. But here in the UK, it's 7 o'clock. And welcome so much to the third panel today of the For Flourishing's Sake virtual book launch extravaganza. And I'm calling it an extravaganza because 3 panels in one day plus another one on the 21st of August is possibly the most I've pushed the envelope out on this kind of event ever. So I am beyond excited to be here with you today, with you watching and with the panelists in the virtual room with me, who've joined us from a variety of settings. So we have a number of people, you can see them there. I'll come back to you now on big screen. So we have somebody here who works in Finland and in the UK. We have somebody here who works in 2 schools in Dubai, another person who works with trainee teachers, particularly, and as a consultant with schools here in the UK, mostly in Norfolk. And then we've got somebody who works in Connecticut in the US as well. So quite a variety of people. And we've also got another person in the room that you won't see as a person, but you'll see this appearing and developing as we go along. And it's the wonderful Rebecca Osborne, who's a fantastic illustrator. I saw her do illustrations first at TEDx Norwich Ed a couple of years ago, and then at the Cambridgeshire Festival of Education last year. And she does brilliant work. So you'll see this developing as we go along. And we've got the ones from the earlier panels as well. So lots of really little snippets there of what we're talking about will actually appear on screen as we go. So we'll be with you for the next hour, but let me tell you just a little bit about who I am and why we're here. So I am Frederika Roberts. I am the author of For Flourishing's Sake, and I'm a former teacher. And before and since then, I've been working as a trainer and as a speaker and consultant in positive education and character education in schools. And I've spoken at conferences all over the world on positive education and positive psychology as well. My passion is really the whole school approach to positive and character education, and we'll be touching on that today. And that's of course the topic of the book, where we look at all the different aspects of whole school positive education. So we'll be with you for the next hour. And we'll be exploring topics around this from the different perspectives that we have in the virtual room today. So they're not all teachers directly, and that makes it quite an interesting mix as well in terms of experience that everybody brings into this. But what I really wanted to do today, just like in the book, I wanted to bring to life the stories and the experiences of the amazing educators that I spoke to as part of the research process for the book. I wanted to make these panels really very much about the how of how we do this. So again, bringing the stories to life on your screen today as you're watching this and as you watch this back later, so that you can really get the stories of how people are making this stuff work in practice, because a lot of what happens otherwise is very theoretical, but then you walk away and you go, yeah, but how do I do that in my school? So it's very much about the how. For Flourishing's Sake, the book is out today. That's why we're doing this today. It's out as a Kindle now. It's an interesting time at the moment with COVID-19, and what that's meant for publishing is that there's been a bit of disruption. So I'm taking this as a great opportunity to have 2 book launch days rather than just one, because I'm greedy like that. So today is the Kindle launch, and then on the 21st of August, the paperback comes out. So you can get the Kindle. There you go. There's a link there that takes you to Amazon, where you can get the Kindle version, and then you can get going on this stuff and explore a bit deeper everything that we talk about on these panels. And then of course you can get the paperback, which I have it, as do the contributors and as do the people that actually wrote the endorsements. But other than that, there are no copies in the world of this just yet, which is exciting. So this book would not have happened without the wonderful contributors that you're about to hear from this evening, and all the others that are not here in this specific panel. So I am immensely grateful to all of them for their time, not just today to be on this panel, but their time as we've as I've interviewed them for the book, and then as they've checked that I've got everything right and so on. It's been a long, laborious process, and I'm immensely grateful to them for their time and their generosity of spirit in sharing what they're doing. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I'm also immensely grateful to Andrew Cowley, the author of the Wellbeing Toolkit, who wrote the foreword to the book, which is absolutely brilliant. And of course, a book would not happen without a publisher. So I'm very, very grateful to the brilliant team at Jessica Kingsley Publishers for making this happen, and everything from the initial idea to actually bringing it to fruition and turning it into a book has been fantastic, with both the editorial and production team. So thank you for that. And a huge thank you to the endorsers who read the pre-publication copies online in order to then write the endorsements to actually go into the book and onto the cover of the book. So thank you very much, all of you. So I'm going to bring all the panelists on screen now. So that I can introduce them briefly before they introduce themselves. So I will, in a moment, ask each panelist to introduce themselves and say a little bit about what they do and where they do it, but also what their thoughts are on their understanding of positive education or character education or well-being education, all the different terms that we use around that, and however that applies to them and their setting and what they do, so their understanding of that. But I'll start off then. Our panelists are, I'll start with you, Ian, and I'll do one at a time as you introduce yourselves. I'll then move on to the next one. So Ian is based in the UK, and he is a positive psychology based education coach, consultant and trainer, and the company is Affirm Consulting. So welcome, Ian. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much, Fred. Yeah, and good evening, everybody. It's great to be part of this. Okay, so very briefly, I'm the director of Affirm, as Fred has just mentioned, and my work is mostly with school staff rather than students, and around their well-being and resilience. And I operate a model that I developed following a master's in positive psychology around building resilience and well-being, and it draws obviously on the sort of history and science of positive psychology, and also utilizes some of my experience, which over 32 years was as a teacher in secondary schools, latterly for the last 20 or so years in senior leadership. I was head teacher of two schools. One was in London and one on the coast in East Anglia, which is where I'm now based. So that's really my background, and my work is very varied, with schools, with school-based initial teacher training providers, where I run a program of training for all the trainees. I do some mentoring and tutor support there as well. I work with school senior managers in a range of schools there to develop positive psychology, and particularly around helping schools to develop their own program for well-being, and also with senior managers and teams on a coaching basis around developing their strengths. So it's very much a strengths-based process. So my work is really quite varied, and will take its own course depending on what the client or the school requires. So fun work, and really interesting to see how it develops, and looking forward to this evening.
Thank you very, very much, Ian. And would you like to say a little bit about sort of your take on what positive education is, particularly as somebody who comes from positive psychology background and training as well? Quite interesting to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I think my take on positive education is really, I mean, my background in education as a senior manager led me to really focus on those hard edge things to do with accountability and data and standards and performance. But I felt through my own experience and experience of people that I work with that there was quite a lot that was missing. And I think the positive education brings that focus on the whole child, the whole member of staff, that their well-being essentially enables them to be the best possible professional self they can be in terms of teachers. And I believe that the positive education angle begins to balance up some of what we're doing in education. And I think that there are some things that I think have gone fundamentally wrong. There's a lack of balance, and I think positive education brings that balance in between, you know, tracking the achievement and the development of young people, but also looking fundamentally at their well-being. So the two come together.
Thank you very much. That's brilliant. And I'm going to go to Julie next, if I may. So again, Julie, if you can introduce yourself and just say a few words, not just about what you do in the school setting, but also your thoughts on positive, or possibly in your setting, it might be more character education that you refer to it as, but your understanding of that and what it means in your setting.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to this panel. I'm excited to learn as I contribute. And I want to just give a quick shout out to Dr. Karen Feldman, who introduced me to you, Frederika. So, and we actually met at the International Positive Education Conference, the initial one. I came to where I am. I'm principal currently at Hartford Magnet Trinity College Academy, which is in Hartford, Connecticut. We're an early college arts and sciences themed middle and high school. But just a year ago, I had been leading Breakthrough Magnet School, which is a character education themed pre-K to 8th grade school, also in Hartford Public Schools. And that my path there, which I'll be very brief about, is I had started out as Teach for America's core as a core member of Teach for America a long time ago as a high school English teacher, where a lot of students were exploring their values and going through a lot of soul searching and values identification apropos of the Rodney King riot era, and realized that I really needed to get trained in order to feel that I could assist students. So that led me to Columbia University's Master's in Social Work program, where I developed a lot of skills, including psychodynamic psychotherapy, and worked with Teach for America as a mental health consultant. That then made me feel prepared to re-enter the schools, first in social work, but then quickly into administration, which is really where I'm happy to be, because I see schools as a place of so many needs are met in schools. For me, positive education formalizes something that many of us in my generation did not grow up learning explicitly. And I really feel that it's important for students to both be academically prepared through rigorous and enriching education, but also to be explicitly and implicitly taught the values that are inherent to positive education, positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaningfulness, and accomplishment, as far as, and also health. I'm excited to continue this conversation and learn from my co-panelists. I hope that answers your questions. And again, thanks for having me.
It does. Thank you so much. And you have such a rich and diverse background as well, that I'm sure we'll be unpicking a little bit more as we go along through the discussion, particularly in the context, of course, of what's happening around the world at the moment as well, which will be really interesting to bring into the discussion as well. And Katrina, I'd like to come to you next, if I may. Oh, hang on. Let's unmute you.
Yes, now I'm back. Thank you, Frederika, and it's great to be here with you and with Ian, Julie, and Serdar and Rebecca. So I'm the director of positive education for 2 schools in Dubai, and I have been leading the character education program since 2010. But in 2016, we have opened a new school, one of the 2, Goldstein Mark School, which is a positive education school from the start, from the word go. And I've been fortunate to work with amazing educators and administrators to develop the whole positive education ethos, which goes along along everything that we do. So we call it the 3-tier positive education ethos. So we have proactive positive education, and this includes all our character and well-being programs that we teach explicitly and implicitly from foundation stage to year 13. And then we have a responsive positive education that includes all our counseling services, and all the psychological help. It's basically that boat which takes the student to the shore when they feel that they're in under the water. And then we have organizational positive education, and that is the mindset that helps us to ensure that our policies, whether with regards to students or staff, have the well-being of our all members and community at the heart. And if in short, positive education for me is when you put the well-being at the heart and center of education.
Thank you so much for that, Katrina, and I'm sure we'll come back a little bit more in detail as well about the 3 tiers as well there, because that's a really interesting angle to explore in terms of looking at the whole school perspective as well. And Serdar, I'll come to you now. Serdar, your background is slightly different to everybody else's, but the reason I really wanted you on this panel is because the business that you run and the work that you do, I think, is such a lovely additional element that schools can bring in to support all of this stuff that Katrina and Julie have been talking about, and Ian, in terms of what education is really about. So if you could introduce yourself and what you do, and what it is that you bring into schools, and then obviously if you've got your own thoughts on the sort of what positive education, character education is, then I would love to hear those as well.
Thank you very much, Frederika. Thank you for inviting me. I have actually been a teacher. I was a teacher for a decade, so it's not completely irrelevant. So today I run Lifter, which is a Finnish company, and it's an immersive storytelling platform. And what that basically means is that we give children a window into the lives of people around the world, and they can literally go into somebody's home or workplace, look around it in 360 degrees, in the safety of their own classroom or home at the moment, click on things to familiarize themselves with a whole new place. And when they're ready, they can click on the human being in that place, bring that human being to life, a real human being, and then get a slice of their life in a short documentary film. And all of the stories on Lifter are true stories, they're real people, and they're positive stories. And it's a way of sharing positive human stories. It's a way of modeling different skills and values and character strengths. And it's a way of taking children out of their sort of immediate reality and showing them that other realities and other perspectives exist in the world. So that's Lifter in a nutshell. And my take on positive education is that we're trying to conjure up, nurture positive emotions, model positive relationships, and really put well-being at the heart of learning.
Fantastic. Sorry, I've muted myself there. That's brilliant, and so much of what you said there that really encapsulated why when I came across Lifter, when I was looking for contributors to the book, I was so keen to bring what you do into the book, because you've touched on so much of that. There's so much that you bring in terms of the character development, in terms of the emotions, and I'm so glad that you mentioned positive relationships there, because that's one massive cornerstone of positive psychology and positive education, of course. And so I suppose there's a couple of things springing from all of your introductions there, so we'll take them one at a time, even though I think there's a lot of interlinking there. One of the aspects, I suppose, is looking at that aspect of the role of schools and educators in forming minds and children that become responsible citizens, that actually have, a valuable place in society, and that can work on undoing some of the injustices that we're seeing, and the lack of diversity that we're seeing, and everything that we've seen happening politically around the world, and particularly with the Black Lives Matter movement. And obviously, Julie, you were saying, you kind of came into what you're doing now from exactly the same problem years ago, and here we are again. And then I suppose we also can't ignore that whilst all of that is bubbling away politically, we're also in the middle of a pandemic, and that's bringing all sorts of challenges from a well-being perspective, and also perhaps giving us opportunities from a character development perspective for all of us, and perhaps opportunities for education, who knows, and to see some of the stuff we want to see. So taking perhaps that initial aspect of the community and citizenship, and how positive education, character education can support that, and then we can maybe move on to the whole school and the other aspects that involve that. So Serdar, I'll come back to you, because I'm really interested actually in what you've seen in terms of what Lifter does at the moment, and how that's being used perhaps to help with the challenges we're facing.
Thank you, Frederika. So we know that a lot of schools are using Lifter remotely now, as simply as a way to share new realities with children. And over the lockdown period, we had a lot of good feedback from teachers and school leaders across the country, basically delivering remote assemblies, remote lessons, and just getting children to explore a new place and watch positive human stories. So over the last period, I think that's been our main contribution. From a child perspective. From a teacher perspective, we've also had had more training sessions, so more CPD than we've ever had before. We've seen a real spike in interest in Lifter over this period as well.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think the other thing that can't be overlooked as well is, particularly in light of the recent political developments and what we've seen with Black Lives Matter, is that actually what you're doing is giving that different perspective, because so many children perhaps haven't been exposed to lives that are different to their own, or to the skin color that's different to their own. And so by actually giving that window, you're really doing something quite relevant in that context, as well as in the context of positive education, would you say?
Yes, I mean, I meet head teachers across the country who say our children don't see the next town, and in some cases there's nobody who looks that different in their towns. They're quite monocultural, and yeah, Lifter is one way of exposing them to different stories, people from different backgrounds. And our big dream is that by the time a child leaves school, if they've had the opportunity to go all around the world, to meet people from lots and lots of different countries, to see lots and lots of different cultures, lots of different perspectives, lots of different slices of life, that matrix of diversity will kind of normalize or usualize diversity. And we believe that they will then be able to see for themselves how interconnected we are, how interdependent we are, and that this wouldn't only have a positive impact on their own education, but also hopefully on society.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think that's a really big aspect actually of positive education, that it's not just about individual well-being, but about societal flourishing as well, and how we can support that. So I'd like to come to Ian on that as well, because I know, Ian, that you've mentioned to me off air when we've talked before about some of the feedback that you've had in local schools from that perspective, and how important this is.
Yeah, I was going to say Serdar's program is running quite a lot of schools in East Anglia. We're that little lump that sticks out on the east coast of England into the North Sea. Ironically, if you drew a straight line, of course, the nearest place to East Anglia would be the Netherlands rather than anywhere else in England, which is quite interesting. But certainly East Anglia is not terribly diverse. And one of my other roles, which is a different role, is as a vice chair in a governing body of a secondary school just around the corner in my local community. And we recently had a very powerful letter that was sent to us by some former pupils who felt that actually their education and the curriculum that they studied had not really prepared them for the world that they're now in, and they kind of regret the gaps that they see in their education. And I think that one of the things that I'm very keen to see schools doing is embracing the students in terms of looking at a curriculum that is much broader. And actually what Serdar's resources do is take children to see that they can relate to those individuals. They can see real similarities, but also differences, and celebrate those. And I think that that sort of education is really needed, as well as in the secondary sphere, you know, students being able to study a much broader range of things, like not just British history, but that, you know, the history at the moment of, you know, Britain's uncomfortable role in slavery, how we made our wealth through the empire, and our exploitation of countries. So they're uncomfortable but very difficult things, but very important things for students to study. So I think all of that is really important. And I think, you know, in terms of our staff, helping our staff to approach those issues, perhaps with better CPD, with different CPD that enables them to do that, so that we can start to face up to some of these fundamental issues. And I think if we want society to flourish as well as individuals, we really need to grapple with those.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your perspective on that. Julie, can I come to you as well, because of what you said about, you know, your background as well? I'd like to hear your views on how character and positive education are really underpinning the role of schools and educators to develop better citizens, I suppose.
Sure. Well, I'll do my best with that. I think with the Breakthrough Magnet School, it's got the unique curriculum that it has, focuses on the students' intrinsic motivation in regards to looking at challenges as opportunities to grow, taking responsibility for your own happiness and well-being in life, understanding integrity, contribution, and knowledge. And hopefully I won't divert too much from your question, but it really, those kinds of values. And then at my current school, we look at being honorable in our actions, mindful of diversity, thoughtful toward others, and contributing, creative in our expression, and ambitious in scholarly endeavors. And I bring up these two sets of values because those are things that need to be both caught through the actions of the adults who are in our schools, as well as taught explicitly in the curriculum, not only in specifically to those areas, but also in the content that we focus on. And those aspects of developing the intrinsic strength, the resiliency, the commitment to having purpose in life in our students during their developing years is really what will build them up both within the school community and then moving on outside in college and career. And I just really appreciate the aspect of, at magnet schools, we intentionally integrate our student population because of our inherent flaws in our systemic racism in the United States. And we really have a responsibility, not only within the magnet schools, which is, again, integrates all of our students from a number of different areas within our state, both racially, culturally, ethnically, and location-wise, for the purposes of what Serdar, you had mentioned, to create true understanding and familiarity and appreciation, not even just acceptance, but appreciation for the variety of different ways that people approach life and their experiences, so that when they truly enter as adults into our global society, they're equipped to make healthy choices for themselves and also make a profound difference in our world. We really need to change the status quo, and it has to start with each individual. I guess as an example, in our school, building relationships, in our schools is what allowed us, when we did move into our closure and started to teach from a distance learning, students both at Breakthrough Magnet School, where I'm still very much in touch with the students, and our school, because we have the relationships that we do, we're able to continue to work on the values from the remote standpoint, and really what we want to, and we've had, as a result, a very high level of engagement in our remote learning. So what you're doing with Flourishing's sake, and making some of these sort of nebulous topics more practical, and being able to learn from all of the different people that you interviewed, Frederika, is just really exciting to me. I'm excited to bring it to my school. where we're going to be formalizing our character education in our middle school, high school here at Hartford Magnet. So.
Fantastic, thank you, and thank you so much for that feedback, because that's really what I'm trying to do with the book, and now with the panels to go with the book, and of course with the podcast that I run as well for Flourishing's sake, which is to really bring this stuff to life, because we've all got kind of ideals and wishes and desires to change things, but what so many teachers say and school leaders, you know, it's if they're just looking at a school that they want to change and they go, well, where do I start? What do I do? And that's what I'm trying to unpack a little bit. So thank you for that. And I'm really excited that you're going to be bringing in more of a curriculum, and we can talk a bit about the curriculum side of things in a moment as well. But Katrina, I wanted to come to you as well on the same question that we've been talking about, because of the setting that you have there in your two schools. I suppose you've got the interesting side of things that you've also set up one school from scratch with positive education in mind, and it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on where the thought processes were there in terms of, you know, the citizenship aspect of the pupils as well, and because I think you've got quite a multinational population in your schools as well, so that's quite interesting. And also, if I remember correctly, you're doing some amazing stuff on restorative justice, which I think also comes into that. So if you'd like to touch on that as well, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, our schools are in a unique context. We have, in each of the schools, we have up to 90 nationalities. We are British international school, and we teach in line with UK national curriculum. But at the same time, in every class, you would not have more than 2 repetition of a nationality. It's almost like, you know, the whole world in a school, and that creates already an environment in which empathy, you know, tolerance, and diversity are valued. In fact, just this year I was teaching a lesson in year 12, and I was showing them the danger of single story talk by Chimamanda Adichie, and then we were discussing, and the students said, you know, we never even, we are in this school for too long, we're in Dubai for too long to actually think of a single story, because we're all different and we hear all different stories. Yeah, so that helps with the citizenship, because they, from the moment they arrive to Dubai and go to school, they're global citizens. That does the job. So then our school's purpose is just to then help them to find the common human values, so that we talk about the human character strengths, human values, and you know, human well-being, kind of. In terms of restorative justice, yeah. So as I was, I think Frederika, you were on my talk in this International Positive Education Festival a couple of years ago, where I mentioned that when we rolled out positive education in 2016 on the whole school level, we understood that there is a disconnect between what we preach and what we do, because the behavior system, the behavior policy was still very much old style, with, you know, with detentions and with, you know, reprimandment and all those things. And we said that we need to rewrite it. So we basically got the team of you know, staff members and students, and we went towards restorative justice approach, which we divide into kind of 4 main aspects. So it's, first of all, it's of course respect, and respect of 4 things. So respect of each other, respect of teachers, and teachers respecting students back, and respect of the facilities. And then it is responsibility for our actions. And if something happened, then that act needs to be repaired. So there is no punishment per se. The punishment is a reparation of damage. So we, let's say if somebody drew on the wall, then they need to clean the wall. But what if they had hurt somebody's feelings? Then they need to repair the relationship. And we have teachers and, you know, members of SLT facilitating the discussion. And then the reparation is chosen by the student himself or herself. And then the fourth step is reintegration, so back into the community, learning from what happened, but at the same time not focusing on it. And the main paradigm shift of restorative justice is that there are no rules of the school. So there are no school rules. There are rules of the relationship, and the rules of the relationship are, again, universal.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think it's such a I think we're starting to see a little bit more restorative justice coming into schools, and it's a really interesting and very different context and concept. And as you say, it's much more aligned with what we're trying to do in terms of character development and positive education and well-being, because otherwise the model of rewards and sanctions doesn't really fit with that particularly well. So it's really great to see that in action. And I suppose that leads me to the broader area, which is the whole concept of the book, is that it's about looking at all the different elements that make up whole school positive education, and we've talked about some of those elements, and I'd love to hear your views on you know, what sort of elements are required, but also if there's any that particularly you want to give some examples of in practice, how you've done that in your own settings. So I'll throw that out to all of you. If one of you would like to start us off on that, let me know if you've got something burning you'd like to say about that, and we'll start with you. Oh, go on then, Ian. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll focus on staff training to start off with, and I think that most of my experience with staff training has been really fantastic in terms of working with the staff at the place that they're at. A lot of what I do is to get staff to build an understanding of themselves, their own character strengths, which is often a sort of a very big transformational moment for them, where they realize they have so much to give and that they have unique strengths that they can utilize in their work. And the development of that through things like performance management, where staff are able to, in their reviews, talk about how they utilize their strengths in their work with the students themselves, how they're able to really focus on how they've utilized their strengths to promote their own professional development. So that's quite a key area that I think in terms of staff training is really important, as well as to veer into those areas of stress management, to look at coping, to use some of the aspects that you'd see in, say, the Penn Resilience program around the cognitive behavioral approaches and thinking skills, to looking at mindfulness, and to look at self-care, which actually teachers are notoriously bad at. Teachers are really good at going the extra mile for the youngsters, for their colleagues, but they're not very good at looking after themselves. So actually exploring with teachers how they really undertake those aspects of self-care, and simple things that they can do for themselves, like giving themselves time off to do stuff that they enjoy at a weekend, rather than constantly thinking about the work that they've got to do, thinking about exercise, you know, taking on board something like yoga or mindfulness that will develop their own sense of well-being. All of those things, I think, can be brought into a staff training program. So for me, in terms of the work that I do, I think that's really invaluable. And really the buzz for me from doing the training is seeing teachers and head teachers take that on themselves and develop their own well-being program. And actually teachers who do that are much more valuable in terms of the work they can do with youngsters, because they're going from a position of strength hopefully in a school where the leadership really care for the staff, and that caring spills over in terms of how the teachers interact and work with the young people.
Fabulous, thank you very much. And there's a lot of aspects there that perhaps the others can pick up on as well. So is there anybody that wants to jump in there and pick up some of those aspects that Ian touched on at all? Because there's quite a few I could think of. Katrina, yeah. Oh, You're muted again.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I absolutely agree with Ian that the training for staff is paramount. And what I noticed from the training that I run, and every member of staff before they join our schools, they have to spend 3 days with me at the beginning of academic year. And what I feel is that it's transformative for them. It opens the whole world for them. But then the problem comes after a couple of weeks and then months when they get into day-to-day work, and they need a lot of reminders. So that's why it is, and those reminders already won't come from the CPD, because we all know in the schools the CPD time during the academic year is limited, and there is a lot of priorities, and people are fighting sometimes whose topic is going to go on that week's CPD session. That's why it's important that every line manager, every team, every middle leader, everybody ensures that they feed those positive psychology and positive education concepts into the daily interactions with their members of staff, so to say, so that it becomes natural for them. And then there is a lot of reminders and reinforcements around the school building and in the traditions of the school. So how do we start the meetings? What time do we switch off our email communication, and all those little things.
Brilliant, thank you. And Julie, yeah, I can see your hand up there.
So echoing the professional development, I also think the leaders in the school, both from the administrator, both classroom, need to have that mindset that is related to positive education, that again is exemplified in a day-to-day way, because it's there's an art and a science. I think, as everybody knows, to whatever content you're instructing on, it's similar for positive education, that there's an art and a science. So explicit professional development needs to start in the beginning of a school year, both for new hires as well as just for a reset for our staff, both in terms of our own vision for ourselves. I think that's really important, and vision for our community, and creating safety apropos of the restorative way, that we have to be safe to look at all experiences as learning experiences and teachable moments, both for ourselves as adults and for students. And I was the mindfulness, having a positive outlook is not possible all the time. We're sort of pre-wired to be a little bit negative thinking, most of us. And I think that getting training in mindfulness allows all of us to have a practice that promotes self-care and promotes some objectivity, and allows us also to promote some really positive self-regulation, which is necessary right from the get-go with adults as well as for students, because that's what creates a community and of a really positive community. And then having it visible in our advisory program. Students at Breakthrough Magnet School get that explicitly taught through advisory. That's something that we have also at Hartford Magnet Trinity College Academy. So having curriculum that is assessed both through formal ways, as far as comprehension, and then also behavioral applications, and really we use a Likert scale at Breakthrough, which I'm going to be bringing to Hartford Magnet Trinity College Academy, in which we really look at whether we're going above and beyond, whether we're being self-directed, whether we need coaching, or whether we're being disruptive, quite frankly, within those values, so that students can really measure themselves against those things and strive to make improvements in those areas. So the issue right now that we have, the sort of co-occurrence of the pandemic, which is going to require a lot of resilience on our part in terms of our locus of control. There's a lot of things outside of our control, and really we learn now more than ever, the only people we really have control over is ourselves. And I think that positive education helps that. And then also developing our influence from the systemic standpoint. Globally, systemic racism is not something that can be solved just through policy. I just saw a recent TED Talk from someone whose name I've forgotten, but like legislation, love cannot be legislative. And I think that's where this also comes in, so that we can create that positive community that's caring, and that then extends beyond.
Thank you so much for that, Julie. There was so much there. I kept kind of jotting down things and thinking, oh, which direction do I take this in? Because there's so many great points. I think the one I would pick up on to start with is that leadership element, because you know, what I was thinking when you were talking, Ian, as well, about, you know, we can teach teachers all of those behaviors that are healthy. But if the leadership isn't backing that up, and they're feeling the pressure from that leadership, and that can be school leadership, or it can be, you know, more systemic than that at a national level in terms of what's happening. And I was thinking particularly, and it's a big challenge for those of us who talk about positive psychology and teach these tools for well-being, when you're in a situation where now, certainly in the UK, you know, and I think it's probably very similar in a lot of countries, teachers haven't stopped since sort of January, February. They haven't had holidays, they haven't had weekends, they haven't had any kind of break, and now in the UK there's some kind of alarming talk of summer catch-up, and you know, when are these teachers going to get a break? So leadership at all levels is quite important there as well, I think, and you know, we can only influence so much of that. But I was wondering, Serdar, whether you had some thoughts on that from your perspective, obviously of having been a teacher for quite a long time, and the impact of leadership on the positive education side of things, but also your experience of leadership as somebody who provides a product linked to this into schools as well.
Thank you. I guess I can share two things. So internally, obviously, we've been affected by COVID quite heavily as well, and over the last few months, we've tried to keep spirits high, to keep morale positive, and the way we've done that is, well, actually we do it all the time in a way. We've got something called Slack, which is a way that we communicate with each other. It's like a sort of more sophisticated version of WhatsApp, and on Slack we have a channel called Lift the Love, which is where we share positive stories or positive feedback, and it's literally used by everyone. So if someone sees a positive tweet, or if someone gets a positive email, they just copy and paste it into the Lift the Love channel, and it really keeps spirits high. We also, all of us, I'm so fortunate to work with the colleagues that I do. We all express gratitude, and this is not something that we've said that you must do. We model it, and it didn't take long before everyone was doing it to everyone. And I think gratitude is such an important thing, and I think there are so many people in society who just literally do thankless jobs. And my plea to all leaders is don't make your team feel like they're doing a thankless job. You know, use gratitude.
Love that. That's a strong message. Thank you very much for that. So yes, we've got, you know, all of those little aspects that feed into the big picture, and I'm looking at the time and thinking, goodness, there's so much more we could explore on this, and already we've only got just over 10 minutes to go on this. So maybe we should look at a couple of sort of closing thoughts from everybody as we come towards the end. Some of this can be a challenge, you know, when we're trying to change the system, when we're trying to improve things, there are inevitably obstacles as we do this. Some of those obstacles are about perceived issues around the cost of doing this, or real issues. There can be both sides of that argument. There can be obstacles around people objecting to change. There can be obstacles around time and whether there's time to put curriculum for well-being and character into schools and all of these kind of things, none of which are, of course, obstacles that can't be overcome. And then that's a whole other kind of panel we could do on just that. But what I'd like to bring out is, you know, because I'm sure all of us have faced these obstacles to actually bringing this stuff in, is how does it feel when we do overcome those obstacles and when we do see those breakthroughs in terms of achieving our vision, even if we're just getting some way towards it. But how does it feel when we as educators get some breakthroughs in that? Would anybody like to start on that one? No, yeah, Ian again. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I really like what the panel in their different ways have talked about in terms of values. And I think if we're to bring it right up to the present in terms of staff in schools, if I was just going to focus on staff, I think that in schools where those values about staff well-being are really embedded, you can have those conversations and check in with staff to see how they are. And well-being is not a static quality or quantity. It's all staff experience ups and downs, and particularly at the moment, I think that the simple things that don't cost a lot are checking in with members of staff to get, if you're a leader in a school, get your team to check in with people. You know, you could do a quick survey that might well be very useful at the moment just to see how staff are. And you might find very varying results. Some people may well have coped with the lockdown and the remote learning absolutely, you know, fine, and they feel okay, and in some cases may well have flourished. Others may not have done. And I think being able to check in with staff, have a quick staff survey to find out how staff are, and then check in with them personally is something that's not going to cost you anything in terms of money, but obviously in terms of time. But I think time well spent checking in with your staff, finding out how they are, offering to be there and to talk through any sort of fears, anxieties that they've got at the moment. And I think that where you've got those values and that culture that Julie, Katrina, and Serdar have been talking about, that's really important. And I really like what Serdar said about gratitude. I think focus on what you really value and what you can see working, and I think that has enormous benefit, you know, even in the most difficult circumstances, and we're in that at the moment. I think gratitude is very powerful.
Thank you so much. And so in terms of, obviously, before your current consultancy role, you've been in school leadership roles as well. Yeah. So coming from the perspective that you're from in terms of, you know, embracing all of that we're trying to achieve in positive education, presumably you had that mindset even when you weren't studying positive psychology, but you were a school leader. So when you had those moments when you felt, yes, staff feel appreciated and all that, how did that feel for you as a school leader? Because I'd like to give a feeling to those who are kind of thinking, oh, but it sounds like a lot of effort. You know, what's the reward intrinsically for me when I'm doing this stuff? How will it feel to me when I've put the effort in?
Well, the reward is, you know, we're all very much social animals. We need that contact, we need that acknowledgement, we need that affirmation. And I think there's nothing more important than a leader actually making contact with their staff and making sure that they know that they're valued, they're appreciated. You know, it fits with the, you know, Seligman's PERMA model. It's about accomplishment, that sense of that you've done something well, that your role is appreciated and what you contribute is appreciated. You know, and actually it connects with the meaning aspect as well, that what you're doing is invaluable to the organization. And I think that if you share that and model that as a leader, I think that's invaluable. And actually going back to the self-care aspect as well, which is not something I did terribly well as a head, looking after myself. Actually, now at 61 years of age, I'm much fitter, happier, healthier than I was as a head, because I didn't do enough self-care. And I think leaders have got to look after themselves, and I think build their own networks of support. And I think that is, I think, quite critical for you as a leader, not to neglect yourself, but to acknowledge that you have needs as well, and to make sure that you get those met.
Thank you so much for that. And I'll just give a sort of a final question then to go to Julie, Katrina, and Serdar, and then hopefully come back to you, Ian, as well at the end of that. Then, what are then your hopes and dreams for the future of education? So if you can just briefly, that could be a whole talk, couldn't it? But can I come to you, Julie, your hopes and dreams?
Absolutely. And I'll just throw out the word empowering, since you asked, how does it feel? It feels empowering as a leader to go beyond the compliance aspect of some of what we have to do to promote that well-being. So hopes and dreams. Our world needs leaders. Our school is a microcosm of society, and hopes and dreams are for my school currently, and for our district and our state and nation and our world, to have schools that promote students' well-being, their ability to be resilient, to be focused on what their purpose is, in order to feel gratified each and every day in their school, and also to then enter the world of college and career and life as a citizen to transform our world, to challenge that status quo. So I believe that positive education is going to assist all of us as leaders. And even if we didn't have it ourselves as students or children, I would imagine that each and every one of us as school leaders or teachers or wherever we're leading from, that is truly what we all want in some way, shape, or form. It won't look the same, but that's not the point. It's just having people who are able to be problem solvers, resilient, and contribute to the betterment of our world, both environmentally and society. So that's my hopes and dreams, and I'm excited to be part of it. And thank you for putting it into a book so we can do more with that as educators.
Thank you so much, and that's a beautiful, beautiful vision and very hopeful vision for the future. Katrina, can I come to you on this one? Oh, you're on mute again.
How do I do? Yeah, I'm so sorry again. Julie, thank you so much for your vision. I'd love to live in that world where it's led by the people who are in your school. So, Frederika, I'd like to still say about the emotion. And when you asked this question, I only felt one emotion, and it's humility. And I remember that after many years of trying to put positive education in our schools, and working with so many educators, I came from an assembly which students in year 6 built around character, and I cried. And I really cried there in the first row, and thanking everybody who had worked on this, every single educator, every teacher, and all the children who put the effort into creating that. So I think it's humbling when you see that it works, at least for me. And in terms of my dreams and hopes for the future, I hope that every child can grow into an adult who feels that there is a space for him, and he occupies this space with the confidence and conviction. He understands what are his strengths. He understands that how to adapt and how to be resilient, and how mindfully and achieve his or her goals. So I very much hope that the future is not going to be linear, that everybody will be able to find their own path, and the schools will help to equip students to find that path.
Thank you so much for that, and that is also a very, very beautiful vision, Katrina. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. I want to see those children grow up and be those people that you've described, absolutely. And I'll come to you, Serdar. What vision do you have?
Thank you all for sharing your wonderful visions. Well, I guess I've sort of shared our vision and our dream before, but I'll put it another way. I believe that the children of today can build a more compassionate, more peaceful, more sustainable world. But if they're going to do that, then it's our responsibility as educators, as innovators in education, to inspire and empower them to do that, so that they can actually elevate the world, the workplaces, and the societies of the future. And it's our responsibility. And thank you all for contributing to that.
Thank you very much for that. And do you have any final thoughts on that, Ian, as well?
Yeah, I thought some great thoughts there. My own thought really, and I feel very hopeful for the future. We are going to need some great leadership. I think that my particular dream for the future is that we really are able to honour the humanity of those that work in our schools and our young people, and you know, to the fullest extent that I think positive education starts to point us into that right direction of bringing together the whole person really, and looking at, you know, not just academic achievement. Our students are not just names on a page next to a grade, but they're people that we know fully. And I think, as the other panelists have said, that we really get to know our students in that whole sense, and all the contribution that they can make to making our world a better place. And I think if we're able to do that, I think the world is going to be an incredible place, really, if our students really are able to sort of discover, with our help, some of their potential and what they can give.
Thank you so much for that, and thank you all of you. Just like when I interviewed you for the book, just like when I went back over those interviews and listened back to them and looked back through my notes, I'm left at the end of a very long and exhausting day feeling so hopeful, actually, and so uplifted by everything that you've shared about what you're already doing, but also your beautiful vision for the future. And I agree, you know, Serdar, you said we can do this, and children can do this, and you've all got this real sense of positive drive, and I'm sure there are so many of us that are driving towards this, that we can do this. And I think if there's something to come out of, you know, certainly the COVID situation that we're in at the moment, is that perhaps it's going to act as a catalyst for change. That's my hope. I've seen it on a very small scale with my youngest daughter, who's studying medicine, and she had a webinar yesterday about how it's going to work when her entire year group and the years above her are supposed to go back and be based in hospitals, and what's going to happen to lectures, and what's going to happen to exams. And a lot of the stuff that they were being told was actually, well, we were actually talking to our National Health Service about changing this for years. And now, because of this, we're finally going to be able to change it and move to a different model of doing it this way. So although it's not school in the sense that we've been talking about, again, it's looking at education in a different way. And sometimes there are things that people have been trying to do for a long time, just like we have with positive education, I think, and character education. And maybe this horrible time we're going through is actually going to do something to make the policymakers realize just how important it actually is to educate the whole person and to not just churn out numbers. That's my hope anyway. So thank you for giving me so much hope. So I hope it's been great for you and for the audience. I'll just finish off with a few thoughts on that, really, and just a little bit of a call for help from the audience as well. So this is it for this part of the extravaganza on the virtual book launch, but we will be back on the 21st of August with another panel, because on the 21st of August, the paperback book comes out. So I'll be posting all the details on social media again. Until then, remember, of course, to buy your copy of the book in Kindle format. And when you do buy it and you read it, I would really ask you a big favour, well, a little favour, really, little favour. But books live and die on reviews, and it's particularly important in terms of where Kindle books are sold on Amazon to actually get those reviews. So it'd be really useful if you could, when you've read the book, leave a brief review on there, an honest review. It's not just all about 5-star. If you don't think it's a 5-star, that's fine. I mean, it would be lovely, but it's fine. Just honest reviews on there. And then if you let me know, and if you go onto flourishingsake.com, on the page where I put all the details about these panels, or if you look at my profile on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or on the Happiness Speaker page on Facebook, I will be posting all the details of how to let me know. It's basically about tagging me and using the Flourishing Ed hashtag that you've been seeing going at the bottom of the screen as we've talked, and letting me know in a private message that you've done it, sharing the link to that review, so that I can then send you a little thank you. So I will send you 5 activities that you can do for your own well-being, even in lockdown, even with social distancing. I will also send you my worksheet that I did when we first went into lockdown, which is 7 wellbeing activities for 7 days, which is aimed at Key Stage 2 children. So even if it's not the children you teach or work with, it might be something you can pass on to somebody else that you know in education. A very interactive worksheet there for children to do stuff for 7 days to boost their well-being. And additionally, what I'll also do is everybody who does that and lets me know and shares their reviews with me, I will enter them into a draw next month, and one person will win a 30-minute well-being workshop, which I'll deliver virtually, which means I can do it anywhere in the world. And that can be either for staff or for children or for parents even within your school. And if you're not school-based, then you can nominate a school if you're the winner for that to happen. So thank you in advance for any reviews that you post on Amazon. I'd be really, really grateful. It will help more people see the book, and therefore also more people do this work and continue what we started. So having said that, I'll bring the panel back on screen so we can see everybody. I'd like to say again a huge thank you, not just for tonight, but also for all your support in the lead up to this, and for your work in sharing your stories with me for the book as well, and all the time that you've put into it and so generously given the stories that you've shared. So thank you, Ian, and thank you, Julie and Katrina and Serdar. And a huge thank you to Rebecca Osborne for the beautiful illustration, which of course I'll send to the panelists as well. Let's share it lots on social media, and let's make sure we tag Rebecca in all the shares, because her work is phenomenal and needs to be seen by more people. And thank you to you who've watched from home or from your offices, whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world. And a huge thank you as well to Annie Poole, who's one of the contributors to the book, who's going to be on the panel on the 21st of August, who's actually been tweeting like mad through all 3 panels. So if you go on Twitter now, all of you panelists, you will see that she's been quoting little snippets of everything that you've been saying as we've gone along, which has been absolutely fantastic. And I didn't ask her to do that, but that's been amazing. So thank you very much, Annie. So thank you all of you, and have a great day, evening, morning, whatever time it is. I think I might go and pour myself a gin now. Thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.